we'll make it work for whatever group. Oh, I see Dr. Byrne is here. Thank you. In theory, it was supposed to reach beyond the immediate circle of people I know and can strong arm into showing up for this thing. But thank you anyway.
Andy, did you say the other night that you have a member of your other club that's been a member of Toastmasters for 51 years?
I think Andy's picking up his audio.
Okay.
That might be Kip, who I saw here momentarily. I don't know whether 51 years? Is that real?
That's me.
That's the number? Oh, wow.
Okay. There he is.
No, it's not me. No, it's not me.
Oh, okay. Sid, that's right. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yeah, he goes all the way back to vaudeville, apparently. Something like that. All right, so I'll charge ahead. So this is an overview of the WordPress for Toastmasters system. I'm trying to cover what it is, why I've been working on it for the past few years, and then go into some tutorial about how to set up one of these sites. And part of my argument is that the club website is pretty important these days. So I'm going to mute everybody else except May for the moment.
Good.
And there's a chat feature where you can type in questions. You can also unmute yourself with the button in the lower left-hand corner if you want to ask a question out loud. So either way is fine. But in a digital age, the first impression that people get of your club is not when they walk in the door. It's before they come in the door. It's when they look you up online. And they're always going to look you up online. They're going to poke around a little bit. They may go through the zip code lookup at toastmasters.org, or they may just Google for the name of their city and the word Toastmasters. Or in the case of online Toastmasters, they may Google the word online and Toastmasters. And I actually found out that I rank fourth, or online presenters rather. The Online Presenters Club ranks like fourth or fifth. If you Google online and Toastmasters, you will find the Online Toastmasters Club right below the listings of various pages on the Toastmasters.org site. So that's pretty good. But ideally, you would have a website that is a good marketing tool that represents your club well. And also, as part of it, I like to have one website that can handle both the marketing and the functional aspects, such as the agenda management. So inviting people in to sign up for roles. Some clubs do have multiple websites, or so they use one site for marketing, and then they have another site. They use EasySpeak or something for their agenda, or they use Google Docs and various things that they piece together. I like as much as possible to have it in one place. So for anybody not familiar with the basics of WordPress, I'm trying to show you that these are some prominent WordPress sites. The point being here is, in addition to being used by small bloggers, small businesses, it is used by major publishers, major marketing organizations. And the software itself actually benefits from the fact that you have all these different parties, some of them who have some money in their pockets, or have a bunch of software developers. When they find improvements, they can contribute them back to the community. So this is open source community software. There is one particular company that backs WordPress in particular, and runs the WordPress.com website, which is something a little bit different. WordPress.com is more like a social media service that you sign up for, where you can set up a blog site, as opposed to downloading the software and setting it up on your own web hosting. And there's sort of that same split in how WordPress for Toastmasters is offered to the market. You can get the plugins from the WordPress.org Or if you sign up with GoDaddy, some web host that supports WordPress, you'll get a complete WordPress install. And if you go into the administration screen and you search for plugins, you can add them right from the administration screen in WordPress. You would just search for the word Toastmasters, you would come up fairly quickly with the RSVP Maker for Toastmasters plugin, which you can add to your own site. The alternative, to make it a little bit easier for people who are not necessarily techie enough to set up their own web hosting plan, is you can go to this toastmost.org site, you put in some information, and you essentially get a website. In principle, that website is advertising or sponsor supported. Though one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit is I need help. I don't have the kind of sponsorship that I'd like to have, and I could use volunteer help. If anybody wants to do an HPL project of whipping some of the documentation into shape, that would be appreciated as well. So we have these two different modes of getting access, and then the WordPress for Toastmasters website is where you can go to get the details. It's essentially the marketing site and the documentation site where I announce new features, I announce webinars like this one, and try and tie things together. I'll just briefly mention that there is another software component. So underneath the Toastmasters software, there's this plugin called RSVP Maker, which is a general purpose events marketing and registrations plugin that I developed a number of years ago. So if you register for this webinar on the website, you filled out an RSVP Maker form to register. My online club, when we bring in guests, they register on the website and they get an email that includes the link for how they can sign in. And we can also send them reminders and things like that through the website. So it's useful as a utility. It could also be useful for, say, organizing a district conference and registering people. And then the third piece of software, or maybe I've lost count, is Lectern, and that is really the design piece. This is what allows you to add the Toastmasters branding. It's a modern theme, and it is relatively mobile friendly. I think there's probably still some work that could be done there, but if you pull it up on your phone, you can navigate around the site, and I've even made edits to the agenda just through my phone. So it can be done. It's a little bit awkward, not perfect, but can be done. One of the things that I emphasize is that you want to go beyond just having a one-page website where you're welcome with smiling people and they're all holding on to certificates. They're getting presented with plaques or certificates. The goal is you don't want your website to look like every other Toastmasters website. And having things such as blog posts that are features that are focused on a specific topic, those are things that help make it more dynamic. And you can embed video. WordPress does a good job with video. You can just take a link from YouTube, paste it into the body of a blog post, and the code for the video player gets added automatically. So that is pretty slick. But you don't really want to use the website in isolation either. You want to use it in conjunction with other kinds of outreach, such as social media. So one of the first things I would do after creating a blog post I wanted to attract attention to is also create a social media post. And some people, particularly people who happen to know, in this case, Dorette, who just won a contest, they may click through to read more. And my standard pattern is anytime we post something about one of these clubs, underneath it, I'll make sure to insert a link saying, here's where you can find out more. So you can be an awesome Toastmaster too, is our headline for quite some time. And then there's sort of a similar principle in trying to have a virtuous cycle of how the website works together with your email lists and other elements. So when you've added all your members to the website with their emails, you can then send messages out to them. When you're Toastmaster of the day and you're trying to get people to fill roles, you can send out the agenda to them. You can add a note up top saying, we really need speakers or we really need evaluators. And the ideal is that people click that link, come to the website and click on Take Role. Then when it comes to meeting day, you can go ahead and print your agenda. You can also print a paper sign-up sheet if you don't do absolutely everything digital. So you can get people signed up. And the paper sign-up sheet too, if you print it, say, the night before or the morning before your meeting, it's going to have everything filled in where somebody already signed up online. You don't want people signing up for the same thing when you can avoid it. You want them signing up for things that you actually need to fill those roles. So ideally, the Toastmaster of the day or the VP of Education or somebody takes that filled in paper sign-up sheet, they go back, they click on Edit Signups, and they fill in the information. So now you have an updated form. And then after that, you can go out and email again and try and get people to fill in the roles that are still open. And there's this little screen that's off to the left side. There's a reconciliation process, sort of like balancing your checkbook. The idea is that after the meeting, if you want accurate records, you're trying to take some of this data that was recorded in the process of setting up the agenda and also have it be information that you can use later for reporting. You can use to keep track of who's given speeches. So the reconciliation process would be going through and saying, Joe didn't show up to speak, but Mary spoke in his place. So we want to make sure that Mary gets credit for that. So that's the theory, and I may come back to the contact screen later. Oh, this was me searching for Toastmasters in the word online. So there we are, online presenters Toastmasters. So I think everybody online, unless, do we have anybody new come in? No. All right, most of you have seen something like this. This is the paper version of the sign up, or the paper version of the agenda for Club Awesome. So it's formatted to try and fit on one page. Again, we also have the sign up sheet view, and I'm going to switch over to my demo site here so that if I experiment with it more, I'm not messing up the Club Awesome website. But this is the individuals view where I can click to sign myself up for a role. I can also click to remove myself. If I'm a meeting organizer, I can go to this edit mode where I'm going to make changes. And maybe I've heard that Abraham Lincoln can't be our Toastmaster of the day because he has a theater date. So we'll take him off the list. And if I then went to view that agenda, I would see that he was gone. A natural next thing to do might be to go out with an email saying something like, emergency, we need a Toastmaster of the day. So you can customize the subject line for this email. You can add a note up top. You can do some basic formatting of it. But then what's going to go out along with your note is this email version of the agenda that includes which roles are open, and it includes a link that's supposed to bring people back to the website to take action. So, suppose I need to restructure this meeting. So if it's set up for 3 speakers and we only have time for 2 because somebody's giving a long speech, I might need to change that. Or this one looked like it's been changed down to 2. Maybe I want to switch it back to 3. So to edit, here I was editing the data that's been entered. I could also go up to the top and I could edit this this document, and it's set up as sort of a templated system that works with the software. So I'm going to go through that in a minute. We also have these links here that will take you to the same place. So edit RSVP event would take you to the same place as agenda setup. Agenda setup template is where we would go if we wanted to change the setup for permanently. If we wanted to always have 4 speakers per meeting or whatever. For now, I'm just going to change for this one event. And one thing that we would see here is we have all these little colored bubbles here. These are representing portions of that agenda, particularly roles on the agenda, such as greeter, invocation, logistics manager. Now, this is not normally what you would see if you go into the WordPress editor. I mean, the basic WordPress editor is a web-based word processor. So it gives you controls for adding images. This is the blog posts trying to entice people to become sponsors of this project. And you have all your basic controls in the editor for marking things bold or italic. If I want to add an image, I can go to this Add Media button, and I can either pick something that's already in the library, or I can upload a new file. And when that's uploaded, it gives me an opportunity to add some text to go along with it as well, a caption. Some of this is popped in here automatically for some reason, maybe because I've added that image before for demo purposes. But I could pick that image, or I could insert Abe's image. And I can also go back and click on any of these things and add a caption. So that is basic WordPress editing. So again, what the heck is going on over here with all these little colored bubbles? Well, actually, the colored bubbles are meant to make this easier for somebody who's not particularly techie to work with this agenda setup. What's really going on here is I have this coding under the covers, and the coding says, here's a role, the role is invocation, and the count is 1. Whereas if I went down to speaker, it would be count something else. And you can work with it in this mode, but I know my VP of Education, when I was introducing this software, was not thrilled with dealing with code. She did not want to have anything to do with that. And so I worked for quite a while to try and figure out a simpler way to do it. So what happens is these little circles, one, you see the icon for the note and the icon for the roles. Those correspond to little buttons up here where we can add a new role or add a new icon, new note. And if we want to change the number of speakers, we can double click here and we can change that from 2 to 4. And we can adjust the amount of time that we need to allow on the agenda for 4 speakers to speak, which would be maybe something like 32. So this is supposed to be a simpler way of getting access to this. The notes can also be set to either show up just on the agenda, which is the default, or just on the web form. That's that form where you click on take roll or whatever. So we could have something that's intended to be just instructions for the web form. We could have something that is intended to show up just on the agenda. Like the people who are signing up for roles don't necessarily need to see information about your 3-minute break or your 5-minute break. Or you could have it to show up on both. And you could also just type text into here. So this would show up everywhere. So we could do that too. But a lot of times I want a note to appear just on the agenda, not on the sign-up form. But we are trying to sort of do several things at the same time. We're trying to set up the sign-up form. We're trying to set up the printable agenda or the displayable agenda. And we're trying to have them all feed into each other. So if I have 4 speakers, I will need 4 evaluators too. And they'll also need more time to do that. So I'm making my meeting longer. And this site is, there is something on the control panel where you have to turn on to have the agenda track time. This one is set up to track time. So that if we went out and viewed the agenda, we would see that it's now, it's now going to stretch longer. I'm sorry, was that Andy asking a question?
Yes. Yeah, the question I had was, how did you get to that box that changed the number of speakers or number of evaluators that you had?
Okay, that's a double click on the little circle here. So if I wanted to have 2 humorists instead of 1, I double click on that, and it gives me the opportunity to either choose something that's standard off the list. So these are basically the things that were tracked in traditionally tracked in the Competent Leader Manual.
Right.
Whereas humorist, some clubs have a humorist, some clubs don't. Some clubs might call it something else, like the joke master.
Okay.
So there are all these different individual traditions. So you can have a custom role. You can determine whether there should be more than one of them, and you can assign time to it. If that person, like a humorist, we would want to have some time allowed on the agenda for the humorist to deliver their
double
speech.
clicking the red stuff over here, because it's very small. I can't read it.
Okay, I can
blow it up a little bit.
I can make it a little bit bigger.
Okay.
So the blue ones, and they all have this little icon of the 3 people over to the left too. So those are all roles. Okay, so if I double click on that, I'll get the pop-up for the role. The red ones are notes, like this thing about my 5-minute break. So it has like a different list of controls. Now the notes can have time associated with them too, like 5-minute break. We would want to have 5 minutes associated with that. Or setting up a contest, the amount of time you expect it to take to announce the winners. So I guess that's another reason why we don't just type the text in if we want to have that kind of logic for the timing associated with these different things. And if I want to add a new one, let's see, I've got it zoomed way in. Normally this would appear right on the first row, but if I want to add a new role to this spot on the agenda, I would go in and either choose or say custom, something like that. And that would appear here. So if we save this and go out to the site, we should see some changes.
Now, on May 15th, when Pathways comes aboard, are you going to be sending out an update plugin so that it will allow you to do both Pathways or the regular stuff?
Well, for speaking, I've actually had some Pathways support in the software for a while. So this is picking a Pathways project from the agenda. Now, Pathways is coming with its own software, this Basecamp thing,
Right.
which I still haven't gotten my hands on yet. So, but what Basecamp doesn't do, as far as I'm aware, is really allow you to plan your specific meetings. It's a tool for tracking what people have done, and they can upload evaluation documents and so forth into that system. I will be looking for productive ways of making the two things work together, but I don't know what those are yet necessarily. So I've got as much Pathways support in here as I know how to do, and also there's an evaluation tool for doing evaluations online. That also includes support for a number of the Pathways projects. But that's as far as I've gotten with that. Yes.
I can just plug in the information because I've been on Pathways since July last year in District 75. Just wanted to add to that, whatever you're doing with this WordPress is a lot more efficient than the Pathways. Pathways is just there to organize the thoughts and specific projects, but you cannot keep track and do the organization of the meetings as you are doing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was. Yeah, that was my impression, and so hopefully some of the information you track through this system, like if you track your list of speeches, maybe you can cut and paste some of that into Basecamp or whatever. But yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe you can tell me practically whether you've used any of that. But so. Particularly since this group is all people who've had some experience to it, what would be most useful to me, to you? What I was going to do was go through the process of setting up a new club website. I can do that, or I can also show you things in the context of an existing club website. I can show you some of the back-end tools for tracking projects. But would it be useful to you to see? I don't know. Part of the reason I'm doing this is to, since I've put a fair amount of effort into the software, I'd like some people to use it, and I'm trying to get the word out about it.
I think how to add videos, how to add a blog or a page or stuff, how to expand what you already got.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Going crazy.
Okay. Well, I'll go through the how to set up a new site process briefly, and I hope it's useful, and then we'll figure it out from there.
And David,
but I'll hit on some of those things like how to add a video. Yep.
One of the things, along with what Kip is, every week we do a quote newsletter which has the results of what happened that week's meeting, including who the winners are, pictures from the meeting, everything else. And I'm trying to figure out how do I add that as a blog or whatever word you want to use, of transferring that weekly newsletter into the web page so that it becomes more dynamic and people can see what's going on with the club.
Sure. I mean, I think you might try and be a little bit more selective than because some of the stuff you're sending out just because people like to see their own pictures, and you know, maybe be a little bit more selective about stuff that you want to publicize that makes the club look good. But still, I'll definitely go over how to create create blog posts. So, all right. So I'm on the front page of Toastmasters.org. Now, and I'm already logged in here. In order to get an account here, I think most of you already have an account here, but if you didn't have an account here, what you'd have to do is you have to sign up for the email list, and then once you prove you're on the email list, you can get yourself a password and log in. And then when you come to this screen, all you need to do is type in the name of your club. So this is going to be the April 25th club. And the web address will be april25th.toastmasters.org. So these are all subdomains of toastmasters.org, because that's the cheap and easy way of doing it. And I recommend this even for people who might have the budget or the resources to set up their own site. You might want to try this first, test it, make sure that it works for you, and then you can go through the more technical process of setting up your own site. And it is possible to export content out of one of these sites and into a new one.
David,
yeah.
Following up on the thing of getting the word out, how many clubs are using the software now?
Well, you know, I don't know exactly how many are using the software that would be downloaded and set up independently. There are some government sites, some university sites that are using it. Some of them have been in touch with me asking for advice, and that's sort of how I tend to find out about them. But there's still only maybe a couple dozen that are set up using the free service. And that is one challenge for me too, in terms of trying to convince an advertiser or sponsor why they should sponsor this thing, is that, you know, they want to see larger numbers. So it's growing more. At one point, I got a little bit panicked about the budget impact of offering the free service, and I stopped accepting new free signups. And then I reopened it again. So it's sort of picking back up from when we shut that down.
I think a couple of dozen is impressive.
Yeah, well,
it's not where you want it to be, but
right.
I think it's impressive.
Well, it's no. I'll look up more detailed numbers after the call. So this actually came up with some little error message, but basically it's telling me that I can visit this address to access this new site I own. And there's some basic directions here. This information also gets emailed to you when you create one of these sites. So if I go to this address, we have just kind of this generic Toastmasters.org information in here, and a note saying that you really want to replace this with more specific content about your club. So I was showing you the editor earlier. One of the first things we want to do before we show this to anybody is to make it look prettier. And so we would probably go through and delete a lot of this nonsense and start adding our own images. Let's say the group picture here. Oh. Okay, let's say this is an event at our club. And when you upload an image, by the way, it does some automatic resizing for you, which is handy. It will create a thumbnail image, just a little one, a medium size, a large, a full size. So let's say we'll do the large version, and there are also some alignment options. But I'll just put in a caption. The alt text is supposed to be, originally it was supposed to be for web readers for the blind, but it's also used by search engines, so it's good to fill something in there. So we can, insert some images related to our club, some more custom information about what the appeal of this particular club is, what makes us special. Since I was asked about video, let's grab hold of a video. Okay, and here's the video from the online presenters webinar contest the other day. Let's see. So what I did was I just copied, actually, let me show you that more clearly. So we're going to the page. I guess I can't magnify this up top, but this is the actual web address for that specific YouTube video. So if I copy that and I paste it in here and hit enter, I get all this video player code for free. And so if I update that, and go out and view the page, there's our image, and we can see that this plays. So, so those are some of the ways that you can jazz up your website, try and make it more interesting. You can, you want to have a good homepage, definitely, but then trying to create blog posts that are topic focused. And they're we want them to be topic focused because that's the way Google finds things. So if I do something about terrific evaluations, let's say, if I search for award-winning Toastmasters evaluation, let's say, pretty sure. I'm cheating a little bit because I know these words are in the title of the post. Let's say, yeah, this is what an award-winning Toastmasters evaluation looks like, and this is from Club Awesome. That's the post that I showed you earlier. So things like this that are focused are more likely to get indexed in Google because they have the word evaluation in the headline, and the word evaluation is mentioned several times in the text, and it's a focused piece of content, as opposed to your homepage probably talks about a bunch of different things that are wonderful about your club. But if you can have a blog post or a page that talks about what great evaluators you have, what great experience you have in the club, that's more focused content. Let's see. So, I did want to cover, though, if you're starting from scratch, how you would set up the meeting and roles for a club. So this is doing it from the beginning. So this is set up as a generic template. It's called Toastmasters Meeting. And one of the first decisions we would make is, when does our club meet? So you can, a club that meets every week, I tend to think is ideal. But you could also say that we meet on not every, but the first and third Friday at 11 a.m. And then We go down here, we're going to see all those little boxes that we talked about earlier. So I won't futz with those right now, but you would put in additional blocks of the notes I think of as being the stage directions. It says things like, we start our every meeting with a round of self-introductions, and then the Sergeant of Arms introduces the Toastmaster of the day. So all those things that sort of weave together your agenda, you can put in these little red note blocks. And then you would, of course, figure out what roles you have in your meeting, whether you have a special role, such as a humorist, who would need to add that to the generic thing. And then if I then save this, also we have checked show times on the agenda. Remember I said that was a configuration option. So what it does then is we said it was the first and third Friday, I think. This has gone through and calculated the first and third Fridays for the next several months. We can check all to add these as a batch, or we could check them selectively. We might want to go through and see if, say, one of those dates falls on a national holiday in our country, and we want to remove that from the list. But assuming these are all good, we would add them all from the template, and we'll get a little note here saying that they've all been added. Then if I go back, suppose I go back and edit my template again. Let's see. So I'm not making a terribly significant change, but there's a little change. And we'll update this. And now what we get is a list of the things that are already scheduled, and do we want to update them? And sometimes if something's been modified independently, it will show you a warning for that. For example, if you had set up one particular meeting to be a contest rather than a regular meeting, it would warn you so that you're not overwriting it with this generic template. So that's the idea. And we can update that, and again, go out and view it. And we should see that change on the agenda where we have a little bit of additional text that's been added. Let's see. All right, I'm going to wrap up in a few minutes, but there is also this process on the back end. I mentioned this earlier. This is the screen that let's see, it's not going to show up here because this isn't an active site. Actually, I'm going to switch over to online presenters for a minute. So this is the screen where the VP of Education can come in and update that information that's been recorded during past meetings. If one person didn't show up and another one filled the role, we can make that information correct. There is a My Progress tab that gives some indications of some overview. If I was still working on my CC, it would show me how far I was along towards my initial CC. Here's a record of all my speeches. This is actually synchronized between a couple of different websites, so it shows the Club Awesome stuff as well as online presenters. But this shows basically all my speeches, not back to the beginning of time, but since we started using the software. And then as Toastmaster of the Day, trying to figure out where other people are in the program. We can also go in and get a view of what they've done through the club.
David, can you backfill that? So if you've not been keeping track of every speech you gave over a period of time, could you backfill it if you track out the different agendas and books that you have to be able to put that in?
Yeah, you can do some of that. So there's a tab here called Edit, where if some of this information was inaccurate, we could go in and delete something or change something. There is the ability to add a role, or add a speech or add a role. You can do it through this screen. An example of when you might use this is if you've given a speech at a different club, but you want to track everything in one place, you could go through and put it in here. Or your VP of Education might do that for a member who says they spoke at the club across town and wants to make sure that that's kept track of. And I think you have to make your own judgments about whether you want to go crazy with this, how perfect it has to be. My argument is it doesn't have to be perfect to be useful. So just being able to go in and see a record of my speeches and where I've given them is pretty useful to me when I'm trying to figure out whether I'm ready for the next award. But and I did have a whole system of trying to track some of the advanced manuals and projects as well, and things done towards Advanced Communicator Bronze. And I suppose that some of that stuff is going to become obsolete over the next couple of years as Pathways becomes the system. And if I can figure out a way of maybe feeding data into Pathways, that might be the ideal thing, so they can be all tracked in one place. But we'll see. We'll have to see what's possible. But this is an example of these little +1 symbols here. If you had led a leadership workshop, you could click on that button, and that accomplishment would be added to the system. Again, I don't claim it as perfect, but it's as good as I've been able to figure out how to make it. And one thing that I've started encouraging people to do, if they're trying to plan farther ahead, there is also this view where you can see what you're signed up for several weeks in advance. And you can, in this case, this is something that's been suggested for me. So the software tries to figure out whether you've done a role lately, and if not, it may sort of nominate you for that. But that's not if I click update, then I will be recorded as now I've been added as the vote counter. You can see that. So now I'm going to agree to speak too. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Let's say I think I'm running out of steam. It's been almost an hour. Are there things that I didn't cover that folks would like me to go over?
Just a quick question, David, regarding the actual RSVP maker. How well does it work with page builders?
I've had good and bad experiences with that. I've only monkeyed around with it a little bit. I don't use page builders personally, so you'd have to try it and tell me. Let's see, what can I tell you? So just so you know, this is the RSVP maker form for this event. So this was the copy telling people why they should attend, And then there's an option to collect RSVPs or not. So you can have, things that you post where you're just trying to show a listing of events. You're not necessarily collecting RSVPs. But when you check this, then all these other options open up, such as space to put in a confirmation message, and there's a system of reminders. There's quite a bit more to that, and there's an RSVPmaker.com website where all the documentation for that is. I'd be happy to talk to you about it more another time.
Sure.
All right, guys.
Sorry, I was just looking into it because there is a huge market here in District 75 to promote your specific plugin and the option of signing up that way, where you could possibly get maybe some more sponsorships, because a lot of clubs that are coming up and that are already active here do not have efficient websites and efficient ways to manage the club meetings. Some of them, most of them do follow the regular pattern manually and everything, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of clubs will be happy to switch over to online stuff because it's accessible from anywhere and you can get people to sign up faster rather than nagging them over the phone.
Well, and if people are, spread out a little bit more too, that might also be helpful. I don't know how close together the Toastmasters clubs are, or, whether they're convenient to everybody yet. But yeah, if there's anything more that you want me to, I set up a session even just specifically for clubs in your area, if that would be of enough interest. Or if they're doing something like a Toastmasters Leadership Institute, maybe I could attend via video conference or something. So.
Okay.
David, is it possible that you can do a webinar on Glib? Because I tried to use it with Pathways. We're supposed to be hooking up with Zoom and doing virtual programs with a number of clubs. And I was going to try and expose people to Glib as well. But I found, one, there was very little resources to explain how things were working. And two, when I tried to take a list of 25 people and download the emails to the site, it wouldn't take it. It'd only take 5 names at a time. Okay. So I don't know whether I was doing something correct or incorrect in that perspective.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. That's another topic for another day. But yeah, we can talk more about that, Andy. I certainly could give you a more detailed walkthrough on it one-on-one.
Okay. Well, I'll see you on Friday.
All right. Thanks, guys. I would have been lonely here if you had showed up. So thank you very much.
And if you and Steve want to go, I was invited to the Dolphins draft day on Thursday. Same for you, Kip and Jim, if you're interested.
Okay.
Appreciate it. I can't do it, but thank you.
All right.
And David, thank you. This was great.
All right. Good night, everybody.
David. All right. Take care.
Oh, hey, Brian, I didn't even see you come in, dude. Did you have any questions, or? I can't hear you, Brian.
Finish the PowerPoint?
I'm sorry?
Are you finished the PowerPoint presentation?
I only did PowerPoint for a minute.
No, not PowerPoint, WordPress.
Yeah, I guess
pretty much.
Pretty much for now. I'm certainly happy to answer other questions. Were you here the whole time, or did you?
No. I thought it was 6 o'clock my time, according to your.
Oh, okay. No. We're wrapping up. Yeah, it was 8 o'clock Eastern, U.S. Eastern.
Oh, 8 o'clock.
All right. Have a good.
I was here all the time.
Okay. All right. Have a good night.
Maybe